Today we're talking about love from a personal point of view. The title for my talk is Love Thyself. You know, love is that universal quality that is often synonymous with spirit, with God. It is that thing that we are all here to be. It is that thing that we cannot be without. Love shows up in so many different ways, so many different times in our lives. We experience love from the very beginning with our mother's love, the love of our family, the love of our siblings and parents and grandparents and so forth, that love that is extended out from within us. And then that love can grow into the love that we have for the friends and people that we meet along our journey in life. It can evolve into an intimate form of love. And then it can evolve into that love that transcends any one person or any one experience. That love that we feel when we are in conscious union with Spirit, when we are connected with each other. You know, one of the concepts that I had trouble with when I first started here at this center was that I can't be loved unless I love myself, which really kind of torqued me a bit. It's like, wait a second, I love myself enough, but apparently I'm not loving myself enough because I'm not experiencing enough love in my life. I wanted more love. I wanted to bring in more love, more connection, more ways of being with people that were different than what I'd experienced before. And what I realized was that, yes, I have to begin to love myself. And by loving myself, I have to do certain things because there are things that stop us from loving ourselves. There are things that have happened in the past that we hold on to, that we identify with, that we internalize, that become so much of a part of us that we can't move forward with that. Author Nancy Levine calls these our disowned qualities. Our disowned qualities. These are things that often happen in our first 20 or 25 years that we internalize and take with us as the truth of who we are. So, for instance, you maybe one time you were a little slow at doing something, and one of your parents said to you, "Don't be so lazy." And so we take on this quality that we are lazy now. And then that starts to become alive inside of us, and we live from that place of being a lazy person. And even though we do work on it, we wind up finding that we think we're over the lazy idea of being lazy, but we get really tweaked by anybody else we see around us that's lazy. You know, if you're in a store and the person isn't responding to your needs quick enough, all those lazy people, why don't they do their job? You know, or your child doesn't do what you want it to do in the time. Don't be so lazy. We begin to see it because we've still internalized it within ourselves. We still have this disowned quality within ourselves. The poet Robert Bly says that this is the long bag we drag behind us. The long bag we drag behind us. These are things that we have held on to, and we've allowed them to grow inside of us. And it's not any fault of ours. We didn't know better. When we were children, we hear these things, we believe they're true. They're coming from people that we respect and love and who are taking care of us, and we expect them to be true. People wouldn't say things to us if they weren't true, right? But we begin to internalize these things in such a way that they become part of our identity. And it's hard to move to that place of love when we're holding on to these qualities that we don't really want to experience in our lives, and we don't really want to have. Often, and like I said, oftentimes we think we don't have them anymore. Robert Bly goes on to say, we spend our early life deciding what parts of ourselves to put in this bag, and then we spend the rest of our life trying to get them out again. When we're young, we hear these things said to us. We either decide that's ours or it's not ours. And it's not a conscious decision. It's not something we're thinking about overtly, but it happens in our subconscious, where something is said to us and we believe it. And we go on to do that. You know, we all have our own stories. And we can't move past our stories until we're willing to own our stories. When we own our stories, then we can begin to work with them and to shift them out of our lives, out of what we're having. One of my favorite authors, Brene Brown, says, owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing we will ever do. It takes courage to own our stories. It takes courage to take one of our stories and examine it, to look at it and see if that's really what's the truth of that story. One of my first practitioners, a dear friend of mine, I would be telling her something, I'd be all involved in all the details of the story, how you get when you're all worked up and in the middle of some kind of an issue. And I'd be telling her this, and she'd look at me and she'd say, now, is that true, honey? As soon as we ask ourselves whether or not a story is true in the present moment, we empower ourselves to reframe it. The moment we ask ourselves, we stop that cycle of repeating that story over and over and over again, whatever that story might be. When we stop that cycle and we ask ourselves the question, is this really the truth of me? Then we give ourselves a gift of being able to move out of the story, to move out of that experience and move on to a different experience in our lives. But as long as we're afraid to look at the story, it builds inside of us. It just keeps becoming more and more and more of a thing. Many of the stories that we tell ourselves about love are filled with self-blame, much more than they are ever filled with compassion. Things that we say to ourselves are most often things we would never say to anybody else. One of my favorite songs has a line in there, the things I say in my own mind. I'd never say to anyone the things I say in my own mind. I'd never say to anybody else the things that I say about myself to myself. And so if we begin to look at our stories through the idea of love, we can begin to shift them. And there are a few things that we have to embrace when we do that. One is it takes a great deal of courage. As I said before, it's one of the most courageous things we can do is to look at our own stories, to look at our own bag that we're dragging behind us and see what's in there. And when we do that, and we do that with self-compassion, then we can begin to eliminate those things. If we can remember at every moment we're doing the best we can with all the tools that we have at our disposal, every moment of every day, we make the best decisions that we can. If we could make better ones, we would. And that's just the truth of it. Whatever the circumstances are going on right then, even if we think we didn't do as best as we could, if we can give ourselves a little bit of compassion and allow ourselves to be more gentle with that experience and saying, I did the best I could. Next time I hope I do better. What a gift that is we can give ourselves. To have that courage and that compassion. The other thing that we need with self-love, to love ourselves even, is to find connection. We need to find connection with other people, with other living things. Sometimes it's not possible to be around people, but it is possible to be out in nature. And nature provides a great deal of healing power of love for us. Just the whole scientific thing of the ions in the air and the grass beneath our feet and the breeze blowing through us shifts a different point of view inside of us when we're out in nature. One of the things that I love dearly are pets. And pets provide unconditional love. More than pretty much anything else. I used to say it didn't matter to my dogs whether I was gone for 5 days, 5 weeks, or 5 minutes. I got the same reaction when I walked through the door. And it was pure unconditional love. They were just excited to see me. And I had 3 of them at the time, so it was a lot of excitement. The wonderful poet who wrote the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu, says that being loved deeply by someone gives you strength, while loving someone deeply gives you courage. We need both in our lives. The connection that we feel with other people is so important. We need to have the strength to love other people, and we need to have the courage to let them love us. So often in our lives, it's so much easier to give than to receive. I think that goes back to that long bag we're dragging behind us. We don't feel we're worthy. And so easier for us to love someone else, to be out there and give my love out, than it is to be courageous enough and being willing to risk letting somebody else love me. But until we can receive with an open heart, we never really actually give with an open heart. If we attach judgment to our receiving, then we knowingly or unknowingly attach judgment to giving. So when we're giving this love, and we think we're giving this love freely, if we've cut ourselves off from that flow of receiving the love, then our love that we're giving out has an attachment to it. It has an attachment to it that is based on all of those things. So many times we think we have to do something, we have to change, we have to be something else in order to be worthy enough to be loved. The greatest challenge that most of us have is believing that we are worthy right now. And believing that at a soul level. It's one thing to believe it at an intellectual level. I can repeat over and over and over again, I am worthy, I am loved, I am worthy, I am loved, I am worthy, I am loved. But if I have that, what I call a BS button, inside of me that's saying, that's not true. Doesn't say it quite that nice. But it's that idea of I'm saying this, intellectually, I know it's true. I know that there's only this one power, this one presence, and I know that it is moving through me and it loves me unconditionally. I know this at an intellectual level. But there are times when I haven't embodied it, when it hasn't dropped down into that soul level yet, to where I feel it. Worthiness doesn't have any prerequisites. We're worthy just because we are. But we've created this long list of prerequisites that we have to have in order to be worthy of love. Some of us, I'll be worthy when I lose X number of pounds. I'll be worthy when I get this new job. I'll be worthy when I learn this new skill. I'll be worthy if I can stay sober. I'll be worthy if I'm a good parent. We all come up with our own list of worthiness things. And we think that we're not worthy to be loved until we get to that point. One of the ways that we can begin to feel worthy is to allow ourselves to be seen. There's something very, very powerful about seeing someone else and about allowing others to see us in that true way. How many of you remember that movie Avatar, the original one that came out? One of the most profound things in there is when they look at each other and they say, I see you. There's so many levels of meaning in their culture for that simple phrase, I see you. And that's what we all are looking for, is to be seen. That's why we come together in communities like this, where we know there are people here that will see us. That's why we join groups. That's why we make friendships, so that we can be seen. Because until we are seen, we know we cannot feel worthy. And as long as we can't feel worthy, we can't cultivate love in ourselves. We cultivate love when we allow our most vulnerable and powerful selves to be seen deeply and to be known. And when we honor the spiritual connection that grows from that offering with trust, respect, kindness, and affection. It's from Brene Brown's book of Imperfection, or The Gift of Imperfection, her book. We cultivate love when we allow ourselves to be seen and to be known for who we are. We cultivate worthiness when we do that. Love isn't so much something that we give or get, but it's something that we nurture and we grow and we allow to become alive inside of us. Love is an ongoing process. And while we may feel loved more at different times in our lives, the truth is that the more we cultivate that, the more we grow it within ourselves, the more we find ways of giving our love without judgment and receiving others' love without judgment, then we can allow that love to grow inside of us. We nurture and grow a connection that can only be cultivated between people when it exists in every single one of them. And we can only love others as much as we love ourselves. There are other things that damage us: the shame, the blame, the ideas of betrayal, of being disrespected. Those damage the roots of love as it's growing within us. And love can only survive if we heal those. You know, if we go back to our creative process of our seed, soil, and plant, where we plant this perfect idea into the soil that always does exactly what it does, and we grow a plant out of it. If we are not cleaning up that soil, if the ideas that we're putting into the soil are good, and we put it into soil that needs some help, then our plant isn't going to flourish very well. The same thing with love. If we take this idea of love and we put it into a soil or a medium that is filled with shame and blame and disrespect and judgment and dragging that whole long bag behind us, then the seed has to work itself around all that stuff to flourish. But if we can begin to clear all that stuff out, we have good, healthy soil for our love to grow, for ourselves to flourish in a greater way. There are a few things that we can begin to do to help us clean up the soil. One of them is to let go of the idea of perfectionism. Many of us believe that we have to do things perfectly, that everything has to be just right. There's one thing about liking things to be a certain way, and there's another thing when it becomes debilitating. When it goes to that point of, I can't move on until it's absolutely perfect, then we know that there's something behind that. Brene Brown says that the thing that is behind perfectionism all the time, 100% of the time, is shame. Shame lies behind the idea of perfectionism. And perfectionism, again, is not just wanting to do something in a good way, but it's being so focused on it that you can't move on. That's because there's an underlying shame that's holding you back. We get to a point where we think, I can't let somebody see that unless it's absolutely perfect, because there's some part of me that is ashamed of the way it's being done or the way I'm presenting it. And so we have to begin to let go of some of the ideas of perfectionism, because rooted in those is nothing but shame. One of the things that we can do is to practice authenticity. And authenticity comes in lots of different ways. One of the aspects of authenticity, actually came from the Book of Joy that we were using last month, is to admit when we're wrong. And to admit it in a way that doesn't take us down further. We all make mistakes in life. And when we just say, oh, I messed up, okay, let's move on. To be authentic in what we are doing, how we are showing up, and how we are being in the world is really a way of sending compassion to ourselves. By being real and true and honest with how we show up and the things that we are engaged in, we are actually compassionate to ourselves. In the book called Mindfulness for Self-Compassion, Christopher Germer says this: "A moment of self-compassion can change your entire day. A string of such moments can change the course of your life." As we begin to be more compassionate towards ourselves, as we begin to live more authentically, as we begin to release some of that baggage that we're dragging along behind us, then we can begin to experience a greater degree of self-love. So, as I said, we talk a lot about principles here. But principles are no good if we don't put them into practice. And so I'd like to do a little practice with this right now. This is sometimes can be very difficult. But this is what we do when we're doing what we call mirror work. We're looking at ourselves in a mirror. And so we don't have mirrors here in front of us right now, but I want you to imagine that you are standing in front of your bathroom mirror. And I want you to look right into your eyes. Look right into your eyes. There's a song written by Karen Drucker and Reverend Carol Huntley called "You Are the Face of God." Very simple words, and I'm going to say the phrase, and I want you to repeat it in your mind as you continue to imagine looking at yourself right in the eye. You are the face of God. Just repeat it to yourself silently. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. Just breathe that in. Now we're going to shift it a little bit. You are the face of love. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of love. Breathe that in. Go ahead and open your eyes. There is a saying that you will never look into the eyes of another that God does not love. You will never look into your own eyes and know that God does not love you too. Because that indwelling presence is that presence of unconditional love. It is that place of perfection and peace. And it is always unfolding through us, through each one of us, as that unconditional love. Sometimes we just have to clear away the stuff so that it can show through better. So let's take this into prayer. I invite our practitioners to stand and surround us. Our practitioners spend at least 4 years in study, learning these principles, developing these practices. I see Reverend Richard back there today. Hi, Reverend Richard. All right. And so we just begin by turning within. I do this by closing my eyes and connecting with my breath. And so right here and right now, I know that there is only one one creative, loving intelligence that has brought forth everything into existence. One power and one presence that is the isness, the allness, and the fullness of all life. I know that nothing exists outside of this one. And I know it as that perfect unconditional love. The self-givingness of spirit, manifesting itself in, through, and all creation, right here and right now. And because I know there's only one, I know that I am one with it. That all that I am and all that I could ever be is the presence of that loving Creator. And because I know this is true for me, I know this is true for everyone. For each of us is that perfect emanation and embodiment of love right here and right now. And so knowing this, I speak my word. I know that each one of us is an inlet and an outlet for the flow of divine love, moving itself into manifestation through each of our acts, each of our encounters, each connection we make. For every moment is an opportunity for us to experience love in a deeper and greater way. Every moment is an opportunity for us to give love more freely and open to receiving it more gracefully. I know that the truth of our being right here and right now is that presence of the divine, that presence of love, that oneness and wholeness. And how good it is to know this, how good it is to feel it and see it operating in the world around me. I just give great thanks for this, and I release this word into that creative love intelligence that's always saying yes, always unfolding for the highest and greatest good of all. I let it go and I let it be. And together we say, and so it is. Amen. Thank you, practitioners.